today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in October and the books that I plan on reading in November. This one's really exciting for me because November is my birthday month. It is Scorpio season. I'm a Scorpio, obviously. So I got my Scorpio mug. I got my Scorpio candle. And then I got my little birthstone November candle. Citrine. I don't have them lit because I'm afraid to light them near my books. Some people do that and it scares me. They're brave. So the very first book I read this month was Verity. I reread that one. I'd already read it. I love it. Gave it 5 stars. I don't have it with me because I let a friend from work borrow it. So she had read it, but she didn't realize there was a bonus chapter. So I was like, girl, I got you. I'm going to bring you that book because you need to read the bonus chapter. So I brought her that, so that's why I don't have it with me, but I've talked about Verity enough on this channel. Read it if you have not. I have a copy I will lend to you. And then right after that, I read Layla, which is another Colleen Hoover book. I gave that one 4 stars, which I also gave that to that same person. I was like, I have another one that you can read too. So I gave her Layla as well, which is why I don't have it, but I did really like that one. It was different. Like, it was still kind of like, what's happening? I wouldn't call it a mystery, but since it went back and forth in perspective, it was, not perspective, but time. It kind of had me a little confused on what was going on, but it's about this girl and a guy, they meet at a wedding, and he is in the band in the wedding, and she's a bridesmaid, and they start hanging out at, like, after the reception. They end up staying the night together, and they stay at this bed and breakfast, like, for a couple of days, just together, instead of, like, going their separate ways. Well, then they end up falling in love and moving in together, and then something terrible happens, and I don't want to say what, because that part blew my mind, too. And then it's just kind of like an unraveling of how they handled that, and then crazy, spooky stuff starts happening. I don't even know how to explain it. But it is really good. I really enjoyed it. I zoomed right through it, just like Colleen Hoover's book. She can keep your attention very, very well. Very well. And then the book I read after that was A History of Wild Places. So this one I really, really, really enjoyed. It is about a guy who gets hired to find this children's author who one day was like seen at this little town and then all of a sudden just disappeared. And it's been years. I don't remember how long exactly. I want to say 5 years. I don't know. And I can't see it right off the bat. But it had been years since she'd gone missing and he had been hired to go find her. So he goes to this town, like retraces her steps, and then he stumbles upon this community called Pastoral. And it's just kind of like this hidden little community in the woods where they just kind of have decided they don't like the outside world, like their ways. Like they would rather work together and do everything for the good of the community opposed to good of the self. And so that's just how they want to live. So it's not necessarily like they're like, oh, everyone out there is a sinner. Like we can't talk to them. Like, no, people are allowed to come to this community from the outside if they want to live that way now. So they're very open borders. At first, they were very open borders, and you could go back out into the world too. But now their borders are closed because there's this thing called the rot that is infecting the woods around the community and causing the trees to die. And if people go outside into the forest and then they come back, they die. So then they lock down their borders. No one's allowed in or out because if they are coming in, they had to go through the woods and they would have contracted the rot and they'll die and they're afraid it'll spread and then everyone will die. And when it rains, they run inside because they don't want to get it from the rain. And it's kind of like a mystery of what happened to the girl, what happens when the detective gets to this community, and then also like what the heck's going on in this community. Like what is this rot? How did it start? Is it actually killing all these people or what? It's very good. I don't even know how to explain it, but it's very good. The ending is very like wholesome. It was different than I thought. Like it's not like a bang 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 thriller, but it gives you just enough to want you to keep reading. And it's just like kind of a feel good. I don't know. I just loved it. It was just like a cozy book, I guess. But also there's death. I don't know, but it was very good. Another book I read was The Project by Courtney Summers. And so this one is about two sisters. Oh, also the history of wild places. I don't know if I said, but I gave it 5 stars. The Project is about these two sisters. One gets in a car wreck and she's like in the hospital for a long time. The older sister is like in a chapel praying like, oh, please don't take my sister. Like, I'll do anything. And then this guy comes up to her in the chapel and was like, I'll help you. And I don't even remember his name. But he ends up being like this person ahead of the project, or the Unity Project is what it's called. And it's kind of like this, it's kind of like a cult, but it's like really well known in the world. Like everyone knows about it because they do a bunch of outreach and they have all these like houses around the city that people can come, shelters, that's what I meant to say. They have like shelters all around the city. They donate money to these things. So it's not like a super secretive cult. They just consider themselves a religious organization that like gives back to people in the society. But anyway, when the older sister gets a part of this community, she is like cut off from her younger sister. They don't talk anymore. The younger sister tries to go there to reach out. They won't let her talk to her sister. So the sister thinks, well, this cult is keeping my sister away from me. Like, they're evil, they're terrible. And then in the beginning, someone that is part of this community dies. He like jumps in front of a train and he dies. Well, our main character is convinced he did it because of the project and like what they do behind closed doors. And she's also like, I don't want to say a reporter, but she works for a reporter. He is, she's like his assistant. So she's not really a reporter, but she's trying to become a reporter. So she thinks like, this will be my next big case. I'm going to break open this society and prove that they're a cult and they're not as good as they like to think they are. So that's pretty much this whole book, is like her trying to get inside and find her sister, find out what they're doing, find out if they're actually bad, opposed to like being inside the cult, if that makes sense. I did not love this book, so I gave it 2 stars. It's really slow. It took me forever to read. I finally had to just download the audiobook to power through it. Didn't love it, unfortunately. Other book I physically read was The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This book was really good. I really enjoyed it. It is about this woman who lives in Texas. She's listening to a podcast one day by the pool, and she hears this case in the podcast. Well, it was her friend from college had died. And so her friend from college actually like went back to the college and hung herself at the college. And she's like, well, my friend would never do that. Something's wrong. Maybe it's connected to what we did in college. So like there's this big kind of like mystery behind like what happened in college that she refers to a lot in the beginning. So then she goes to New York to try to figure out what happened to her friend. Like they haven't seen each other since graduation. So she's like, well, what happened since we made a pact to leave? She left. Why'd she go back? And so it's her and this podcast host, which she knew from high school, trying to figure out what happened. And they find this like super dark community, secretive community in New York that has a bunch of like high up people. I don't want to say who's a part of it because I feel like that spoils some of it, but there's a bunch of high up people in this really dark, secretive community. The podcast host refers to it as a cult, and they do like, there's a lot of trigger warnings in this book, just so we can get that out there. Let me find them for you. Suicide, rape, physical violence, sexual violence, trauma, self-harm, misogyny, gender essentialism, and drug use. So that's all I really want to say on it, because I'm afraid if I keep talking, I'm going to spoil what happens in this book. Like I said, I really liked it. I gave it 5 stars, but I did go on GoodReads and read a 1-star review of it. And I do see where they're coming from. Like, I can see why one wouldn't like this book. Because like I said, her friend who killed herself, she was like, her college friend, she was like, she would never do that. Like, what the heck? I know her so well. We're best friends. But yet they have not spoken since college. So they've known each other for 4 years in college. Which I'm not saying that if you have a college friend that they can't be your best friend. But usually if they're your best friend, you'd keep in contact with them. Like, I have friends from college that I still talk to, and I would consider good friend, but I still talk to them. Like, we didn't graduate, and now I don't ever see them again, you know? So that part, they were crapping on that, which I get. That thing that happened in high school, that happened in college to her, she gets kind of, I think they mentioned him, so I'm just gonna, brutal philosophy. So she, in college, they become obsessed with this one guy. And that leads down a really deep, dark rabbit hole of all this stuff. But she meets this guy one time and is like obsessed in love with him and will do whatever he says, no matter what it is, even the craziest shit. And like, she prides herself in her college days, she prides herself kind of on being a feminist and, not letting people tell her what to do. But yet she meets this guy one time and now she's like, all hail this guy. So that was another part of that criticism, which I get. But it was a really good story. I really enjoyed the story. I really enjoyed where it went and some of the messages in it. And there was like an interview with the author in the back of it that I really enjoyed. And there was just some stuff she said in that made me like it even more. But that was this book. These are all the ones I physically read. So one I listened to was The Wedding Crasher, which I think I talked about in my last one. I ended up giving that 4 stars. It is the same writer as, it was another wedding related book. What's it called? The Worst Best Man. Same author as that, which is why I picked up the audiobook. I liked this one as well. I ended up giving it 4 stars because the conflict in the end was annoying to me. But I did enjoy it. But that's why I gave it 4 instead of 5. And the other one I gave 5 stars because that one's conflict was actually more sensible to me. Then another one I listened to was, where's it at? Oh, The Luckiest Girl Alive. So I listened to that because it's a movie on Netflix now with Mila Kunis, and I love Mila Kunis. She's my girl crush. I love her so much. So I was like, well, I'm going to read the book so I can watch the movie. Well, I hated the book. I hated it. I ended up giving it 2 stars, but now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know. I really hated it. And I'm kind of nervous to watch the movie, but I'm still going to watch it because it's Mila Kunis. And maybe the movie's different than the book because that happens a lot. But I hated that book. What is it even about? I don't even know. It's about this woman. She grows up. She's engaged to this high society man. So now she's rich. And she also talks, and she's just like part of the rich high society community. And she's about to get married, like I said. And she is obsessed with eating nothing, obsessed with working out, obsessed with losing a shit ton of weight, even though I'm sure she looks fine. I don't know. In my mind when I'm reading it, I'm picturing Mila Kunis, which I guess that's on me. So I'm like, this girl's stupid. And then the whole part of this book is she is going to go and be a part of this documentary of something that happened to her in high school. And it's one of those things where they hint towards it, but never tell you what it is until more than halfway through the book. What it ended up being and why everyone was obsessed with her specifically, I didn't like. I don't know, I get it, why they wanted her to be a part of this documentary. I don't know. I don't know how to explain what I didn't like about this book. It just annoyed me. I just didn't like it. I don't know. I'm going to watch the movie, though, because Mila Kunis is in it, and I love her. Another one I listened to was Hide by, I think it's Kiersten White is her name. I hated that book, too, which I should have known, because I've never heard anybody like it. It is about these kids, and they get an invitation to this competition that is set at a theme park. And it's like a hide and seek competition. So every day when the sun comes up, they have to go and hide, and they can't come back to the base camp until the sun sets. That's when the day ends. And 2 people get out every day from the little seekers, and then, the next day. And the winner gets a bunch of money. So it has a really good premise. But it twists into this very strange thing and just went downhill for me. I don't know. I'm not a fan, which like I said, I've never seen anybody enjoy it. The cover's beautiful, and the premise is good, but the way the author took it and ran with it, wasn't a fan. It was one of those that if I wasn't listening to it, I wouldn't have finished it. Same with Luckiest Girl Alive. If I wasn't listening to that, I wouldn't have finished it. So I gave them both 2 stars. Yes, so now I'm going to talk about all the books I'm going to read in November. And I say all like I'm going to read a lot. I don't read that much. You know, I read okay for an average person, but I don't read like 20 books a month. So the first book I'm very, 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 very excited to read is It Ends With Us. My next in my Colleen Hoover series. So this is my Colleen Hoover era. This is the next one on my list because It Starts With Us just came out, and everyone I know in the whole wide world wants me to read this book. So I'm going to read it. This is the next book I'm going to pick up. So there's that. What's it about? Don't know. I think there's like a romance. There's an abusive relationship in there. I did start it already. I've read 1 chapter. So far, it's just about this girl. She's on this roof. She meets this guy. They have a great conversation. Then he has to leave. So I don't know how they meet back up again, but I know from the back that they get into a relationship. And then it says her first love comes back into the picture and her world is threatened. That's all I know, really. So we'll see if I like this. I'm kind of nervous to read it because everybody loves it. Everyone in the whole wide world loves it. It's becoming a movie. It just got the sequel and it's all over the place, and I'm afraid I'm not gonna like it. But I've liked her book so far, but I haven't really read just like a pure romance from her. So we'll see. We'll see. But I am excited to read it and see what I think. The next book I'm going to read after that is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. I said I wanted to read this last month. I didn't get to it. I'm going to blame the project for taking me weeks to finish that book. So I'm going to read it this month. So I've already talked about it. This girl goes to a small town. She meets this girl in this town and becomes friends with her, and the whole town doesn't really like this girl, so she's trying to figure out why. And I'm pretty sure it's because she's a witch. It doesn't say that. It says she does seem to wield a certain power. I mean, I'm pretty sure she's a witch. So I've heard only great things about this book. And I've heard it's perfect for like the time of year, like fall, tiny town, giving me Gilmore Girls vibes. So I'm very excited to pick this one up. And then I am currently listening to an audiobook called Blindsighted by Karin because I've heard it's really good. I've liked a Karin in the past, and Joe listened to Blindsighted, and I'm pretty sure he enjoyed it. He said it was really dark, but I'm pretty sure he enjoyed it. And it's one I've been wanting to read, so I started that one. It's a part of a series called the Grant County series, and it is about this sheriff. I think he's a sheriff. There's a deputy officer, and then there's this main character named Lena in this tiny town. She is the pediatrician. Wait, is that her name? Her name's Sarah. Lena was the deputy officer. Lena Trent? No. Jeffrey? I don't remember the cop's name. The sheriff's name. And then Sarah, which is like our main character, she is the pediatrician of the town, but she's also the coroner, I think is what it's called, where they, get the dead bodies and see how they died, kind of thing. Works for the police. She does both jobs because it's a small town. If she was only a coroner, I'm sure she wouldn't get that much business, so she's also a pediatrician. So this one starts out with Sarah going to a diner to meet her sister for lunch. She goes to the bathroom. There's a girl dying on the toilet who has been slashed up. And then the girl proceeds to fall on her and die, which is crazy. But she's the coroner, so she has to figure out how she died and all that. And then to top it off, the sheriff, who is, of course, investigating this case, is her ex-husband. So that's fun, too. So their dynamic's really weird. And then just the case in general is, odd for this tiny town, because they're like, well, is this an outsider, or is this some part of our tiny town that we know doing this? I'm assuming from reviews I've seen there are going to be more murders, but I haven't seen any more murders because I just recently started it, but thought that'd be a good one for November. Because November like I've said, is Scorpio season. So I did some research, and I want to say 46 serial killers have been Scorpios. So I think it was a 3-way tie between Scorpio and 2 other signs of like, this sign has the most serial killers. So Scorpio was on there. Charles Manson was a Scorpio. I went through the list and I recognized no other of them. But I was like, 46 serial killers are Scorpio. So I'm going to read another serial killer book. Jar of Hearts by Jennifer Hillier. Hopefully. This is what I'm hoping to get to. I do not know what this is about, but I've heard great things. I've heard great things about Jennifer Hillier. I've read none of her books, but it says an explosive, edge-of-your-seat thriller about 3 friends, 1 murder, and a whole world of secrets. See, I don't know, girl. I thought this was about a serial killer, because I watched a video of Beth Saw Booked here on YouTube. She loves dark books, loves Jennifer Hillier, loves Karin Slaughter. She actually also recommended Blindsighted. That's how I heard of it. But I watched one of her videos today about books about serial killers, and this was on it. So that's why I wanted to read it. So I'm hoping it actually is about a serial killer. Oh, yeah. Calvin was a notorious serial killer. Boom. There is a serial killer in it. Okay, good. So that's all I know about this, is that there's a serial killer. I'm sure it's dark, twisty, crazy. Probably not as much as Karin Slaughter, but that's okay. I'm feeling some dark, twisty, crazy stuff right now. Scorpio season got me feeling dark and crazy. And then some other books. I probably won't physically read these, but I want to re-listen to or read, but I'll probably listen to them on audiobook, the Maze Runner series, because he's coming out with a new one in the series. What it is called? Oh, The Maze Cutter is what it's called. And it is like set in the future after this happened. So I'm very excited to read that. I'm going to read these 3, and there's like a prequel, I think, called The Kill Order. Yeah, The Kill Order. And I'm pretty sure that's a prequel to the series. And then there's one he made called The Fever Code, which I'd never heard of until today. And from what I read about it, I'm pretty sure it's just like a book showing about how these people decided to build the maze, or how they built the maze, I think. I don't know. But then he's coming out with a Maze Cutter that is like in the future. He is definitely stringing this series along, for sure. Trying to get all that money out of it, you know. But I want to reread them because I read them, if not in high school, I was like a freshman in college. But I feel like I read it in high school because this was part of that, you know, Divergent, Hunger Games era where we were all reading these dystopian books, which, don't get me wrong, I still love dystopian. But back then it was like the thing. So this came out in that whole area where all the dystopians were coming out. So it's been a long time since I've read these. And I remember loving them. But I could not tell you very much about them because it's been so long. So I want to get into them again to read the new one, because if I read that new one now, I don't think I'd know what was going on at all, like whatsoever. But I think I want to listen to them just to get through it a little quicker, because the audiobooks I think are only like 10 hours. But we'll see, because I'm starting on this week. I'm starting night shift at my job. I have one more day shift, and then I go to nights. And I'm hoping I can get a lot of reading done while all my little babies are sleeping. So that's the plan, is to hopefully reread. If I probably won't read all 3 of them, but at least like start my reread through these. That's my plans for this month. Have you read any of the books I plan to read or read? And just let me know what you think, or if you want to read them now that I've talked about them, or don't want to read them now that I've given them 2 stars, and what you plan on reading this month. Thank you. Bye.